Hi, welcome to How to Be a Humane Leader Without Losing Your Job. In this podcast, we dive into compassionate leadership in today's fast paced business environment. With our experience and insights will help you lead with heart while securing your career. Join us for engaging conversations and practical advice to elevate your leadership skills and make a real difference. I'm your host, Torres, a seasoned startup engineering leader, alongside Chris Ollerkin, a Fortune 100 IT leader. Today, we will discuss how individual contributors and leaders require resilience to overcome problems, adversity, and difficult situations effectively. Hey, Chris, how are you?
Hey, Roberto, I'm doing good. Very interesting topic today, so I hope you're energized and ready to tackle it.
Yes, I am, sir. And someone from LinkedIn suggested this topic from one of the posts that I posted asking what should we talking about in this podcast. So I had to ask you, resilience doesn't link exclusively to a leader. It could become also for an individual contributor. I don't know, have you faced something like that in the past?
Absolutely. I think we all start out in general as individual contributors, right? We start off at some job someplace and we're on our own. And I think that's the first part of becoming a humane leader is being a humane individual contributor. Have feelings for your coworkers. You want to support them and have the whole team succeed. And in at facing adversity, was part of the post on LinkedIn where how do you keep calm and carry on? And you know, very early in my career, there were economic downturns, so I was still an individual contributor, and we were facing layoffs. And those are the kinds of things that can be very nerve-wracking, very upsetting, high anxiety, high stress situations. I think a humane leader or individual contributor can really help people by acknowledging that fear. I've seen poor leaders say, don't worry about the layoff, and that dismissive of people's feelings. That's not being humane. We all should be humane to each other as coworkers. Acknowledge that person's concerns and say, yeah, the company did miss our earnings that we had projected. And I've heard some of the same rumors. I don't know if they're true, but there's certain things that we can do to be better prepared in the event of a layoff, right? One, make sure we're doing the best job we possibly can so we're not on the layoff list. Maybe it's, we can't handle that stress. Prepare your resume. So very early in my career, I always tried to help people be ready for the worst case scenario. Hope for the best, plan for the worst. So have that resume ready. LinkedIn didn't exist at the time, so I'm dating myself a bit. So you didn't have an online profile quite yet in my career, but you'd have your resume ready in case unfortunate things happen. I think that's a very good way to be resilient.
Yeah, indeed. And one thing that it is that if we see problems like they're like an onion, an onion has several layers. You can learn from these problems. So the biggest, not the biggest problem, but a problem which it is bigger than the previous one. You could know what to do because you apply this resilience to, let's say this one, this example that you mentioned. Okay, they're going to be fires. So when you apply resilience, you harden yourself, let's say, and you know what to do next. So if something arises that it is a bigger problem, you might use the experience that you had, and for the next problem that will arise, you will know what to do and be expected to overcome this. That is resilience, to excuse me, to acknowledge the problem. Uh, don't be and don't have an anxiety regarding, and be I wouldn't say tough, but be prepared to know what is coming and how to act.
Exactly, exactly. You know, you don't want to um, deny those feelings, I guess would be the way I'd put it, right? But don't let the anxiety freeze you from taking any action. Of all the layoffs I've been through, many of them throughout my career, knew sometimes as a leader I knew they were coming, sometimes I didn't. But I'll tell you what, through those experiences, I'll tell you the people who managed it the best, whether they were leaders or individual contributors, is they took action and prepared, like you said. And it seems like that taking those steps of action, just even simple preparation, like updating your resume and making sure you have a copy of it at home versus only on your work computer, things like that, really helped a lot of people cope with the stress of that. And really about being resilient is, what do you do to cope? And that's, again, applies to both kinds of people, leaders and individual contributors. What is your mechanism to cope? And as you go through life and get older, you get wiser, you learn things from others, because you can't experience everything in life. Sometimes you got to learn from the other people around you that experienced certain things in their lives and they teach you about them. But keep your ears open to that and listen to what did they do, what worked, what tips worked for them, whether it was the resume preparation, or maybe it was talking to coworkers that are no longer with the same company who have a slightly different perspective on what's going on in the economy. So maybe it's just your industry that's facing adversities. Well, then, if you can't manage that stress, maybe it's time to switch what industry you're working in. If you and I are both IT people, but I worked in the chemical industry for a long time and then in manufacturing, maybe it's time to shift into telecommunications or something, a different industry that might be doing better. So resilience to me is about, acknowledge your feelings, but then trying to take action to do something and leverage those around you who maybe have some experiences that can help you come up with other new coping mechanisms if the adversity is even more challenging than anything you faced before.
Yeah, and I really like a word that you mentioned, coping. You know, you could cope with what life either throws you or gives you, and it is, besides an experience, it is something that you will gather and maybe cherish for the future. And let me tell you something that is not related to business, but happens a lot in Mexico. We Mexico City, it is very fond, between quotes, of earthquakes. Okay, we had two big ones in 1985 and 2017, in which many buildings went down, many people died. And why I bring this? Because when I had my first earthquake and I was aware of that, well, you had to act accordingly as you feel. And I had this insights and this knowledge that I learned. So when it struck back in 2017, I was leaving from a meeting. I understood what to do, and I was in a meeting with, I think we were like 12 people, and some of them froze, and some of them were really scared. So I understood that I had to go with them and bring them calmness, because that resilience that I had from many earthquakes allowed me to act calmly. Usually, earthquakes don't let me panic, and I brought this calmness to those two people that I had in front of me, and I got them out of the building and keep them calm. If one person does that, have resilience and pass it on to another, it might be that resilience will be taught, and move on to another people. So it could be like a big chain.
Oh, absolutely. That is a very critical point. And, a lot of our topics, we talk about developing humane leaders. And I really think very strongly with this, we need humane workers. Doesn't matter what your role is.
Yeah.
Everybody can be humane and learn humane skills and pass them on to others to treat everybody more fairly, more equitably, more kindly. Doesn't mean that you don't have goals and they're tough, aren't tough goals. And it doesn't mean sometimes people need to be fired. That still is going to happen. But I do think that the workplace has become a lot less humane. And by you demonstrating your skills of calmness through this adversity, you can pass that skill on to others. And believe it or not, even as an individual contributor, if you show good, humane characteristics and skills and manage through the stress, even your leader, your manager can learn from you
Uh-huh.
and recognize that that's that's how I want to be the next time I face that situation. Whatever the humane skill was that you demonstrated, that is very important. That we have to grow these humane skills, not just upwards for people going up the management chain. That it needs to go horizontally. It needs to go down across diagonally. Everybody in all companies needs to be more humane, because I'll tell you, society in general, in my opinion, I'm seeing it become less and less humane. There's road rage and all kinds of other problems. You're exactly right. We need to lead by example, regardless of our role, and others hopefully will follow.
Yes, indeed, two things. The first one, when I approached you back on December, mentioning that same words, that today humanity lacks humane leadership, and that's why we created this podcast. That's the first one. And the second one, I totally agree with you. Uh, we could be either ICs or leaders, but regardless of that, in our job position, we don't require to have leader, manager, director, VP, CEO, whatever, to become, to use resilience with others. What I see in life, usually, regardless of the position that I am, is that I'm like in a compass, in the middle of a compass. I have north, south, west, and east. So either I could become, I could help maybe my managers, I could help my reports. And people has to see that way themselves. If there are ICs, they just see there are like a compass in the middle one. So what could I help learn or teach or bring this resilience to my managers? Because I don't know, maybe there is something. It's like last podcast in which we talk about illness with a family member. So maybe what I'm seeing is that my manager has his wife or her husband has an illness problem. What can I do to bring resilience to my manager so he or she could overcome this problem in the way that I can? Maybe I cannot fix the the illness, but if I could help my manager, it's something that is totally humane. So we don't require to be, as I say, leaders, manager, director, etc., to bring resilience and to help other people.
Yes, exactly. And you had followed the thread, from the LinkedIn post, and one of the things was, how do you stay calm under pressure? And I think it's a false pretense to think that, well, the best leaders are calm no matter what the chaos is. That's not necessarily completely true. Um, Under the surface, they may be panicking. It's how do you quickly move past that to action also. So, when you're in your example, the boss maybe has the spouse and you're the direct report to them, and they're facing this crisis of health problems, or they're facing the crisis of the business downturn. You can still be very nervous about your own job, but give them advice that you've learned from others, about, hey, one of the best ways to manage through that anxiety is what action are you going to take? Because I think for me personally, a lot of times when I am facing something that's making me very nervous, if I just don't take action, all I do is think about it, the problem seems to grow and get bigger. My
Uh,
anxiety about it gets bigger.
a snowball.
Exactly. It snowballs. Instead, if you can actually bring yourself to take action, or coach your manager in this situation, they're not taking action, give some advice to them. Just because it's not a peer flat level relationship, it's a direct report up to the boss. You can still give advice in the right way, in the right times, for taking action. What are the options? What kinds of things can we do differently? Something you're doing right now isn't helping the anxiety. Well, then don't keep doing that. Try something else. Whether it's, hey, you know what, you need to take a break and take a day off and exercise, or you know what, maybe you need to take a day off and visit your parents or visit your children, depending on your age bracket and so on. That really helps you manage, to set things in the proper context, to manage that situation and realize, again, I'll use the layoff situation, because usually stressful situations are at work are very frequently economic downturns. So if it's a layoff situation, you know what, I tell you, I always felt a lot different after I visited with my parents, because you realize what's important in life. And so, if I was facing a layoff many times, gosh, I lost count of how many layoffs there were. Um, you just put it in perspective. And you're like, you know what? I'm not going to die from this layoff. I could lose my job, and that will be very unfortunate, and it will be stressful. But when you put it in perspective, yeah, but I'm here with my parents, and isn't that great that they're still alive? I had much older parents. We talked about this before the show started. My parents were significantly older when they had us. So compared to my friends, my parents were almost 10 to 20 years older than their parents. So I was always worried about losing them. And so when you put life in perspective, it helps you have resilience, right? Because you can kind of rank the priorities of things. Hey, you know what? A layoff is not that big. Hey, my spouse has cancer. All right, that's much more important than a layoff. Both are bad, but when you're coping, put things in order, kind of help your boss or help your coworker rank the priorities of things and understand. And if it is a life and death thing, let's say it's medical, like we discussed previously with something with cancer, help them cope. Hey, what will help them through that situation with more resilience? Is it taking some time off to research medical options? Is it being able to be with your spouse when they go to the doctors so you can hear firsthand and ask some of the questions? There's different ways to cope in these situations, and it's not always the leadership at the top helping the peer below. It can be the peer helping the boss, or it can be a peer helping horizontally in the organization, helping them through difficult situations, because maybe they've experienced, a spouse with an illness or a child with an illness or something, the really life important things
Yeah,
versus jobs.
yeah, and also something to add is you have spoken of if something would happen, but what about if you have faced a layoff? You know, you were working at a company, you faced a layoff, something that you didn't expect. How would you cope? What would you do? You go to another company, and maybe that company there could be the risk of another layoff, maybe sometime later. Well, you have gathered that experience. You have gathered these hard knocks that will have teach you maybe the bad stuff. So you will bring that on, including yourself, and know what to do or what to expect. First of all, it is not living on fear, because, well, fear is something good. It brings you this awareness and brings you and opens your eyes and be prepared. But it's something like we spoke a few podcasts ago. It is something that you don't have to be in fear, in the constant fear all the time, but use it wisely. So if at the company, let's say the certain company, there is a risk of layoffs, and you to be in, be prepared. Polish your LinkedIn profile, update your resume, maybe have slim cows in your budget if it could happen. If it could happen, if it happens, excuse me, okay, you have act wisely to know what to do. If it didn't, okay, it is something that you will add to your knowledge, that you will not dismiss. It is something that you will add, and life is ambiguous. So if we are prepared, but if we act um, wisely and we act calmly with that, knowing that maybe an event might occur, we're preparing and we're planning life.
Yeah, and that action, that kind of being able to recover from the anxiety by taking the action and being prepared helps you be more calm, and I think it was Luis you said who had posted this thread on LinkedIn, right?
Otherwise,
He's concerned about how does how does a leader develop those skills to face those adversities and show calmness and so on. Well, sometimes it's trial by fire. You do have to experience some bad things, unfortunately, to develop those skills to be resilient in difficult and facing adversity. So I do think that sometimes you just got to live some life. That recent college graduate who's 21 or 22, somewhere around there, just usually has not faced as many life adversities. So they're going to find it more challenging to be resilient. As we get a little older, we experience more things, we put things in a better perspective. I think then that's how a leader, so this time they do have direct reports, can be calm for their team as they've been through things. They maybe go panic a little bit in their office with the door closed, but can come out calm and take action. And by taking action, that helps the team uh, move forward, right? Because then the team can take some actions of things, regardless of whatever the adversity is. So I would always urge the humane leader to recognize that when they're facing adversity and they're nervous, very likely their direct reports are nervous, and that humane leader needs to acknowledge that and come up with action plans to help everybody, take some actions, because that generally helps reduce anxiety just by taking action, some kind of action.
yeah, and being calm. Taking the example that I gave you of the earthquakes, if there is an earthquake right now and you see someone which has fear, a lot of anxiety, which is so nervous, you will get nervous. But if you see someone calm, it might help you.
Mm-hmm.
So either you're a leader, a human leader, or an IC, and there is this situation, and you provide calmness, not naiveness, calmness into the situation, regardless of what position you have. You will feel calmer, and maybe you will trust the situation if that person, as you mentioned, act. If they act and goes along with this calmness, it is their resilience that will go along.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And I think the worst thing you can do is the reverse of that, is the denial. And I've seen that too in a lot of business situations where the leader, sometimes even the CEO, denies, and then you realize he's lying. He's totally lying, which then creates more anxiety from people, right? And so that, I mentioned a little bit before about acknowledging the anxiety, acknowledging the stressful situation that the company might be facing or the employees might be facing. Acknowledge that. So many of the leaders I've seen, they deny, and you could see right through it. It's like, are you kidding me? In the town hall or on the earnings call, they said we missed these numbers. They said we're going to put efficiencies into place, which is always the code word for layoffs. And the leaders would be, oh no, deny that. It's on the public record. And when they're telling you to deny it, let's say it's leadership above you, then they're lying. And that only creates more anxiety amongst the staff and so on. So I think my last point would be is, when you're facing these difficult situations and adversities as a leader, as a true humane leader, don't lie. You may not be able to tell the whole truth, but don't lie, because when they can see through the lie, it will make their anxiety worse. It'll make everyone in the team more stressed. So absolutely don't do that. Do what you can to acknowledge, give the truths that you're allowed to give, and take action. And that will help your coworkers, that will help your manager above you, it will help team members if you have people reporting to you. Be honest, be humane, and that will help everybody through the challenging situation.
Indeed, indeed. And before we do the wrap up, as you mentioned last week, I will give you something to maybe think about it. Resilience is something that we learn. It's not something that we learn from a book and we apply. It's something that we learn from life. If we gather these experiences, if we gather this knowledge, and as I mentioned, we create our own onion of layers and use it wisely, it doesn't matter the situation, we will act wisely.
Absolutely.
Great. So with this, we can do the wrap up. Great. Okay, well, thanks for joining us on another episode of How to Be a Humane Leader Without Losing Your Job. We hope our insights help you become a smarter and more strategic leader. Apply today's lesson to see the positive impact on your team and career and life. Catch all our episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Anchor, and YouTube. Join us next week as we discuss something trendy in the leadership world. Until then, stay humane and stay successful. Bye-bye, Chris.
See you later, Roberto.